Hi everyone, welcome to Mentally Strong Mums. My name is Alina Bishop, and this episode is going to be about your core values, what they actually are, how that then reflects your self-worth, and sometimes if you're in a romantic relationship with someone, how sometimes their core values override yours, and then you can kind of lose yourself in all of that. So, we did a podcast earlier. It was a while ago, and it was in a relationship one. And I said that you, especially with that generational legacy, what are your core values? And if you don't know what they are, this is the episode to help you understand what that is and to be able to find your boundaries, your expectations, and how that increases your self-worth, right? So sometimes as well in a family setting with your romantic partner, why mismatched values can then cause these relationship tensions, especially if we don't know what they are, right? Also understanding in terms of your values, what are your non-negotiables? What's very, very important for you? And I even had this with a client recently, and they didn't know what their values were, and they thought putting up a boundary or their ethics, values, and morals, putting that on their partner was essentially telling them what to do. It's not, because these are my family values. This is my expectations of how we raise our children. You doing this is not ethical for me. You engaging in this behavior is not ethical. It's not a good family value. You're actually teaching them really negative or maladaptive things. They're now repeating these things that you're doing. And that then upsets me, because as the adult, you should know better and you should set a better example. And we've had this discussion. So that's why understanding your core values, why that's important for you, how this is a reflection and understanding of your own ethics, values, and morals, right? Sometimes as well, why women people please. Sometimes that then equates to self-betrayal, right? Where you give in or sacrifice or justify or people please or comply because it's easier than having those really difficult boundaries or those really difficult situations or conversations if you're not firm in what your values are. And so sometimes it's a really lovely conversation with your partner to have too. What are your values? What are your non-negotiables? These are mine. What are yours, right? Especially understanding that we're not the same person we were 10 years ago. We probably weren't even the same person we were 5 years ago. And how, with children, our evolution of relationships, our evolution of self, how your values evolve as well over time, and what that then says about your growth. When couples come in with me, I generally always give them an emotional needs questionnaire, and I say to them, fill this out every tax time, because you don't have the same needs that you had last year, and you won't probably have the same needs that you have this year. So that's why all of this is very important to know, that it's this fluid evolution over time, right? So how can you also teach your kids emotional integrity and values as a part of this generational legacy? Do you know what I mean? Because when you know who you are, you stop begging for love. You therefore then attract it. Okay? When you know who you are, you stop then begging for love, because you're grounded in yourself. You know who you are. You know your worth. You know what my values are. I don't apologize for that. It's not about me being arrogant. It's about me having self-worth and self-respect. And I'm going to protect my children. I'm going to be that mama bear. And these are family values, or these are work ethics, or these are relationship bound, whatever that looks like, right? But if you're a people pleaser or you don't know what these are, it's very, very difficult for you to stand in your truth, okay? So if you've ever changed what you believe, how you act, or what you tolerate, sometimes just to keep the peace because it's easier, you didn't lose your partner, you lost yourself. And that's one really difficult thing. There's also this theory that men, because all they have primarily is testosterone, so they just have this continual testosterone. So they're pretty much stagnant throughout their entire life, right? This is a theory. The theory that women are different and opposite because of our hormones and what we go through. So from teenagers going through menstruation, for our 4 different cycles that we have. So menstruation phase, luteal phase, ovulation, and then there's the follicular phase. I always have trouble saying that, follicular, right? And how that influences us. And then all of that changes when we have children, right? And the nurturing and the matrience. Matrience is that saying about the way that a woman changes from being a woman. And then matrience is the process of becoming a mother, right? And then after that, we then go through perimenopause. And then after that, it's through menopause. So men just have testosterone. That's it. But women, through all of our growth, through all of our life, we seek more, we grow more, we learn more. Therefore, all of our stuff evolves and grows. And that's how we're different from men. And that's normal and healthy, right? So if you were able to reflect, especially now, and that's why we evolve in terms of our ethics, values, and morals, because we're not the same person and different things happen to us and our body responds in different ways, right? So do you even know what you stand for? Do you know what your core values are? When was the last time that you actually said no, even though you were scared someone might react negatively to you, right? Sometimes it can be very, very dangerous to say no when you are trying to be vulnerable or you're trying to be open, right? So, core values are the emotional compass that guides your choices, that guides your behavior, as well as your integrity. So, there's a theory as well, if you can see me on YouTube, that there's a scale, a top and a bottom. So the very top are things like your Nelson Mandelas that will go to jail for the right thing and in terms of their high ethics. Sometimes if you have a look at the bottom of the scale of ethics, it's the people that indulge in criminal behavior and they're able to then justify that their ethics are their own ethics and not societal ethics because for some reason they justify why they do what they do or how they've been miswronged and how this is a part of their survival and why it's justified for them to be able to engage in this criminal behavior, right? A lot of us kind of sit in this middle bit where sometimes we might not be as extreme with our ethics, values, and morals, where sometimes we can let things slide or let things go. Sometimes we might even just do little cheeky things as well. But it's actually understanding sometimes in terms of your ethics, values, and morals that it is on a scale. So if you are at the higher end of that scale, in terms of doing the right thing, but your partner is on the lower end of that scale of justifying why they do the way that they do. So they then don't align. Your ethics, values, and morals don't align. And if your ethics, values, and morals are higher on the scale about why it's important to you, especially in terms of integrity and generational legacy, that can be very difficult to drag someone else up to be able to grow, have, evolve morals if they don't think they need them, you know? So that's a huge disconnect as well because that's then an internal turmoil because that means that I either have to relax or ignore or compromise my ethics, values, and morals to keep the peace to come back down to yours. So that's huge, right? So when it comes to these core values, they're not just nice words or nice acts or opening doors for people. They're who you are when no one's watching. And one that I always use with clients is that it's nighttime, there's no one around, you're in the car, and the light's been red for a long time. There's no one around. There's no cameras. What do? Do you go through the red light or do you sit there and wait till it turns green? Sometimes that's the difference between someone who's higher on the scale of ethics, values, and morals versus someone who's a little bit lower because your core values are who you are when no one is watching. All right. That's that kind of stuff. So that's a really, really lovely talking point to understand as well. So studies show that value alignment predicts long-term relationship satisfaction more strongly than personality similarity. And me saying that, you can completely understand, because if you were the person that would sit there with, if you were the person that was on the highest scale of ethics, values and morals, who would sit there and do the right thing and wait till the light turned green, versus your partner who was a little bit lower on the scale, who justified their behavior by going through the red light because no one's here and I'm not going to get punished for it. There's going to be a constant conflict between the relationship and your core values with each other, because they will always bend the rules or do things their way and won't be consistent, where you will always do the right thing, you will act ethically, whatever that looks like. And that's where conflict can kind of come from, especially if we're not willing to negotiate or be flexible or even talk about it in the first, right? So I'm going to give you a list of core values. So you can either write these down in your phone, write these down on a piece of paper, the ones that are really important to you. These also fall into emotional needs, a couple of them, but these are also very important. So I'm going to read out a few. You can have all, you can have a couple, you can have none. And even if you want to write down your core values, the ones that are important to you, and then rewind it and then get your partner to write it down as well, and then see what are the same and then see what are different. Okay. So these are core values: integrity, honesty, empathy, respect, growth, loyalty, adventure, security, creativity, compassion, independence, kindness, spirituality, family, learning, freedom, generosity, stability, authenticity, balance, trust, justice, playfulness, curiosity, health, accountability, purpose, connection, courage, self-respect. And I think when you hear them, you're like, yeah, they're all really important to have. But in terms of ethics, values, and morals, it's almost on a scale of which are the ones that are non-negotiables for me, which are the ones that, yeah, they're important, and which are the ones that apply only in certain situations, not a blanket kind of thing. So sometimes if you can rate them as well out of the most important for you versus the least important, that can also really help with understanding who you are, what your values are, what you live by, and that can help you also evolve and grow forward for yourself, right? So, especially if you did that exercise and your top three, these are essentially your non negotiables that are boundaries that protect your peace. Imagine if you had your top three and you did it with your partner, and your bottom lowest three that you didn't really, that weren't that important to you, they were actually your partner's top three, right? And you were the complete opposites. That would always then clash, because of the things that were really important to you are not important to him, but the things that are really important to him are not that important to you. So you're both fighting for different things. So then there's this power imbalance, and then it feels like there's disrespect, and then I feel like I'm misunderstood, and then I feel like you're not safe, and then I feel like you're not on my team. So that's a really good that's a really good exercise to do as well with your partner, because it can help understand, well, maybe we might be opposites, but maybe as opposed to seeing that as a negative, maybe we could see that as complementary, that these are my strengths and I will protect the family this way, but these are your strengths and you will protect the family that way. I won't judge you on yours, but don't judge me on mine. All right. And how can we negotiate and be flexible with our own core values? That's about maturity and having these really difficult conversations, right? So, but if they are your non negotiables, what does that actually look like for you in terms of your safety? I'm sorry, I've got a cough. Um, so, for example, honesty is a non negotiable. Do not lie to me. Respect during conflict. Do not mock me. Okay. Shared effort in parenting. I don't want to have to do this whole mental load all by myself. Right. So that's a really interesting conversation to have. Right. And as I was saying earlier, our values evolve over time. So your 20-year-old self values, potentially they were about fun chemistry, versus your 40-year-old self values peace and partnership, right? So it's normal and healthy to understand what this evolution looks like. And even in your children, what does that look like, right? They definitely won't have, or they might, you never know. And that's a really, really great discussion to have, right? So you being able to change your core values, ethics, and morals isn't about inconsistency that you then gaslight yourself for. It's about growth and evolution and how my life is changing and how I'm growing, be mentally strong to be able to then update all of my core values, right? So neuroscience shows that our priorities shift as these dopamine driven novelties wanes, and then the oxytocin based stability increases with age. So when you're younger, it's generally about that dopamine seeking, the fun, the silliness, the playfulness, because you're young. And then the older that you get, you want that stability, that oxytocin, that love, that consistency and predictability, that everything's going to be okay, that I'm safe and secure. I don't need all of the hype of the stuff anymore. I just need peace, right? And so coming back to partners, you don't need to have the same values, but you do need to respect each other's. And that's why that little experiment is a really lovely thing to do for couples, because imagine if you're the complete opposites. You don't need to have the same, but you do. A non negotiable is you need to respect each other's core values, ethics, and morals. So if one partner values freedom and then the other one is security, right? And then one values financial success, but the other one then values connection. So conflict sometimes then arises when these differences occur. We don't have to be the exact same all the time. We don't have to see this as a threat, and we don't have to see this as incompatibility. We look at this with curiosity, that we're different genders, we're different humans. Um, we've had different experiences in life, we grow differently. So how can we then come together to respect each other? So almost asking, what does this value mean to you? I don't understand why this is your number one. Why is that important to you? Because these values often mask deeper emotional needs. So almost, I need security means that, you know what, I just need to know that you've got my back. I need to know that you won't ever leave me. I need to know that you won't throw me away. I just need that security so I can feel safe to be who I am without feeling insecure that if one day you get bored and then you'll leave. Do you know? So these are beautiful conversations. And the last episode was about validating and invalidating that in that moment. If you both listen to that together, will then validate each other in that moment. I see why you would feel that way. I understand now about security, and then that reassurance. I would never leave you. I think you like. Do you know what I mean? So the trap sometimes as women, we can be those people pleasers, therefore that self-betrayal, right? So sometimes you, as that people pleaser, where you submit, justify, um, people please. We just want to be liked. We don't want to be seen as difficult. We just want to be able to comply. Sometimes it's easier just to say yes than to have to figure out how to put up a boundary and say no. Do you know, if we, especially if we haven't learned boundaries yet, I can't do it. So it's just easy to say whatever. Okay, right? But when you say yes to things that violates your own values, right? You then prioritize peace over truth. And then you then outsource your self-worth to then someone else's approval. So then you're getting external validation as opposed to validating yourself, right? So that chronic people pleasing or that toxic people pleasing activates that fawn response, which is that people pleasing fawn response, which is the parasympathetic pause, which almost mimics that depression, helplessness, what's the point, dissociation kind of stuff, right? It's within that trauma survival mode. So long term, if you keep on doing that and with that self-betrayal, putting everyone else's needs above your own, obviously it's going to lead to depression, resentment, as well as that identity confusion, because self-betrayal is still betrayal. It's just with a smile, right? So you need to be able to know your values, act in alignment, even when it does cost connection. So that's also understanding how to do boundaries, right? Validate yourself before seeking external validation. Remembering that your boundaries teach others how to love you. Your boundaries teach other people how to be able to speak to you and what your needs are. If they disrespect your boundaries, well, then we have to have a look into manipulative behavior. All right. When I honor my values, I honor myself. So, understanding everything that we've done today, model, don't lecture about core values. You can then narrate what's happening for you. I choose kindness even though I was angry, right? Encouraging self reflection for you and what is important to you, and then being able to reinforce repair, honesty, courage, as well as accountability, right? So, knowing that your values is not about perfection, it's about direction and knowing who you are. Because if you don't know what you stand for, what is it that saying? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. If you don't know what you stand for, you'll keep on falling for what doesn't align with you. And then that creates really negative mental health for you. All right. You deserve better. All right. Well, thank you so much for showing up today and listening to this episode. I really appreciate you. Go back or Google it, core values, have a chat with ChatGPT if that's your thing, and understand and really know what your core values are. And then with your partner, be brave and have that conversation with them. All right. Sit down, have a couple of whatever that looks like, make it a cute little event. All right. Have a good day. Bye.